Before I start this video, I just want to give a very sincere and heartfelt thank you to all my supporters on Patreon. When I made my Patreon account, I did it with the express purpose to not disadvantage anyone who just watches my content casually. And because of that, for me, and it's just a personal choice, I don't upload any special videos purely on the Patreon website. But I hope that doesn't come across that I'm not grateful for your support on it, for all of you who do support me on Patreon, because I really am. So I wanted to make this quick, pre-roll before the video starts to just thank you guys. Your support is phenomenal. I really do appreciate it, and you perform a massive help in just keeping Shadowversity going and also just encouraging me to make the best videos I possibly can.
Shadowversity.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and the purpose of folding steel in regards to making swords is very misunderstood in the world. People don't really understand why, or understand what is exactly happening to make you want to do it in the first place. Now, I cover this in my video series, The Truth About the Katana, but I want to make this video just covering the subject in and of itself, and because I've also learned some more information, because I'm always studying, I'm always learning new things, that I can add to it. So this is a comprehensive, video to explain why folding of steel is advantageous, why you'd even want to do it in the first place. First of all, the process of folding steel is called forging. When you forge steel, you're working it in any number of ways. So you can either be drawing it out into a length or a shape, or you could be folding it. That is all called forging. And what you have to understand, folding steel is not a magical process that makes, the best steel in the world, that for the best sword or anything like that. The need to fold a steel comes directly out of the fact that the steel you are working with in the first place has impurities in it. If you had pure steel, higher quality steel, you wouldn't need to fold it. Folding is a process to remove impurities and also homogenize the steel, because if the steel has an uneven distribution of carbon, all right, because if you make a sword or a knife or anything like that, you want the strength to be uniform across the whole edge. If it's not, there might be an area that is particularly weaker than other areas, and it is prone to chimping, dinting, cracking, or even snapping in that area, which is bad, okay? So if you can even out that weakness through the whole sword, instead of having one fatally overly weak part for this specific thing, you've made the whole blade the tiniest bit weaker because you've evened it out, which is a far better alternative than having a vital weak point. Now, why would steel have an uneven distribution of carbon? The simple answer is that the steel wasn't fully liquefied through the smelting process. And when I say steel, I am referring to iron. You see, to fully liquefy iron, you need to get it very, very hot. And medieval levels of technology didn't always get there. In bloomery furnaces, and this is including the Japanese Tara, which makes the tamahagane for the katana, that is a type of bloomery furnace, and all types of bloomery furnaces can't liquefy iron. The advantages, though, with bloomery furnaces is that there are many other elements, okay, that do reach a melting point lower than iron. And so if you're able to melt out all the other crap, you can be left with some half-decent steel as a result. But because the iron itself wasn't liquefied, the carbon wasn't distributed uniformly throughout the entire body. So there you go. That's the first kind of point of information that I hope people remember, all right? If there's ever a need to fold steel, it is because you are working with imperfect steel in the first place. So what other stuff remains in the steel? Well, there are a couple of, a number of things, and they're all identified as slag. Slag is basically stuff in steel you don't really want to be in it. Now, there are a couple of other inclusions that can be slightly beneficial depending on the content. Silicon can be a little bit good for steels if it's a small amount. Titanium and other trace steel elements as well. But other things, okay, like bits of rock and other things that have been melted and stored in there, not good at all. The question is then, how does folding remove impurities? Because this was a mystery for me when I really looked into it, because I was able to find pretty definitive evidence that excessive repeated folding, right, will remove impurities. But how? I mean, it's logically intuitive that it would even it out, okay, homogenize the steel, but how could it actually take the impurities out of the steel? Well, one of the answers I found is actually in the different melting levels of whatever is in the, the bit of steel you're working with, because iron has a pretty high melting temperature. But when you get iron red hot, okay, it's still in a pretty solid lump, all right? So the iron isn't melted, but it's really hot, and the other non-metallic inclusions in the steel will have reached melting temperature. This is interesting, okay? So there are little pockets of liquids in the steel that have melted completely, hopefully, right? And then when you fold the steel over and compress it, okay, and hammering it down, what is going to happen to those little pockets of non-metallic liquids? They're going to get squeezed out, aren't they? There you go. That's actually one of the answers I found in how folding steel actually does purify it to a level. So when you're folding it and then squeezing it out, flattening it down, stretching it out, folding it again, and repeating the process, you're doing a number of things, and one of those things is actually squeezing out, and so the sparks that are flying off and all these things that are happening, okay, when you're folding the steel, is squeezing out impurities. Very interesting stuff. The other way it's able to do it is that the oxygen in the air is able to burn out surface level impurities in the folding process. And so if you're able to burn out a lot of the impurities on the surface and then you fold it, okay, you're moving what was once in the surface further into the middle, and you're moving the middle material of the metal onto the edges as you go, all right? And so this is another means in which folding steel is able to burn out and purify the steel. The tricky thing about this is that it also does it to the carbon, okay? Oxygen loves to bond to everything. That's why so many things burn on Earth, right? That's all thanks to oxygen. And so the oxygen is going to try and bond to anything that it can. And it can't bond to things that already are oxidized. And so if there's types of scale and rust and other things that get stuck in there, well, oxygen won't be a means to get it out. This is why when folding, it's very important that when you fold those metal pieces over, you don't have any of the scale caught in between. What scale? If you ever see forging, anyone working on stuff, you'll see like black flecks forming on the surface and flicking off. That's actually the surface of the steel and iron, right, oxidizing. It's rust, okay? And it happens at a much faster rate when steel is hot. And so there are techniques and means that blacksmiths use to actually prevent this surface level oxidization, and they especially want to do that on the parts of the steel that's going to be in contact and then forge welded together. Because like I said, if you get scale caught in between the gaps, the folds and stuff through this process, is very hard to get out, if not impossible, and that's going to result in a far inferior material for a blade in the long run. And so one of the drawbacks of folding steel is decarburization, which is the burning out of the carbon in the steel due to the surface of it coming in contact with the air. And if you burn out all the carbon in your steel, guess what? You don't have steel anymore. You can render down, okay, high carbon steel into mild steel, and even mild steel back into what you would call iron. All from the forging process, and folding steel requires a lot of forging. It's a lengthy process. So this is why when making like sword blades and other things like that, that require a lot of folding because you're working with imperfect steel, they choose a type of steel with a much higher carbon content. And this is why katanas utilize it's not in the whole katana, it's only a third of the steel that you're using in katana that falls into the category of pig iron, which is a type of steel with a very high level of carbon. And people ragged on the katana saying it's made out of pig iron, how great can that be? It's actually a very necessary process because the steel requires folding, okay, it's going to lose carbon in the process. So they start off, or they add in a portion of steel with a very high level of carbon, and then with the folding process, with the decarburization taking place, but also being able to remove a lot of impurities, not all. I need to really point that down. You can't, well, it doesn't seem like you can remove all impurities from steel through folding. Maybe if you did like, I don't know, huge amounts of folding, it might be possible, but because it's a very time-consuming and lengthy process, a process that can take up to months just to get how many folds? Up to 20, actual folds, which results into many, many layers. And 20 might even be too excessive. And remember, especially with medieval technology, okay, you don't want to forge, because that's the thing. The more you forge and fold it, all right, the more impurities you're able to get out of it, but the more carbon you're losing through the process. So it's a give and take. You get something good, but something bad is also happening. So you need to balance it and not do too much. And the final result, because you started off with steel that had a higher carbon content, even adding pig steel in some circumstances with the katana, the ending result is steel with the right carbon content at the right level to make a really good blade. Now this is amazing. It's ingenious that people have been able to figure this out, all right? And they clearly understood this in Japan when making traditional katanas. But this entire overly lengthy process could be avoided completely if you just started out with pure steel in the first place. Then the only forging you need is to draw it out into the shape. No folding necessary. It saves you months of work. And the quality of steel and the type of sword that you would be able to make as a result will be better, okay, stronger, more resistant if you're able to quench and temper it properly. But with that done to the best quality that you're able to do, you will always get a better quality sword that had no impurities, that didn't require the forging in the process. Now what's interesting in the modern day is because the making of a katana and other swords is a very traditional process and they want to maintain the tradition, they actually start off with really pure good quality steel anyway, forge it without really any necessity to do it because the steel was pure in the first place, just to get that visual look, the lines of the folded steel on the blade, for an artistic result, not a functional result. And this is the misconception that some people believe, that folding steel somehow enables a sword to be stronger and sharper than if it wasn't. That is false. Completely incorrect. Folding of steel is only necessary if you have imperfect steel in the first place. And in fact, taking good quality steel, very pure, and folding it opens up to more detrimental results, okay? It enables possibility for scale to be caught in between the folds, and scale is bad, right? You have rusted bits of steel in between the folds. And it also creates a higher level of decarburization through the forging process. So far from the pop culture idea of forging, steel makes it better, no, forging good quality steel has higher chances of making it worse than what it was. And therefore the only reason you would want to do it is for the artistic, beautiful result of the pattern on the blade. And there you go. So I just want to make this video as a definitive point to just explain why you would want to fold steel in the first place for making a sword. Thanks for watching. I do hope you have enjoyed, and if you want more detailed information on the forging process, tempering, quenching and stuff, I do go into detail in my katana series. So I hope to see you there, or if not, I hope to see you again. And until then, farewell.